Hey guys, I wanted to make this video to explain how to properly play around Black Arrow for Dark Ranger BM Hunter. I see a lot of the same mistakes and wanted to try to lay out all the info in a way to try to make it stick. First, I'm going to show my recommended talents here, and we can talk about nuanced swap talents later once you guys understand the class more. Black Arrow has a 10-second cooldown and can be cast on targets above 80% or below 20% health. Black Arrow is your single highest priority spell, since it does high single target damage, high AoE damage, applies Beast Cleave if 3+ targets are hit, and gives a sack of the Bell Tolls buff. Getting a Black Arrow proc will reset the cooldown and let you cast Black Arrow regardless of the target's health. Black Arrow procs are called Deathblow. There are 4 ways to proc Deathblow, which are your auto shots, 20% chance, kill command, 20% chance, Black Arrow, 15% chance, and Withering Fire, which is your cooldown window, and it will give you 6 guaranteed death blows, but we'll go more in depth with that one later. Let's talk about your rotation outside of cooldowns. Since you're wanting to hit Black Arrow off cooldown, each time you hit kill command or Black Arrow, you can typically expect a Black Arrow to come off cooldown 20% of the time. So be ready to press it at all times, since your auto shots can also randomly proc it when you aren't expecting it. Your priority out of cooldowns is typically Black Arrow, multi-shot for Beast Cleave, kill command, barb shot, and don't forget to multi-dot it, Cobra shot. The single biggest mistake I see is people munching Deathblow procs, which means they have a Black Arrow active that they can send, but they hit kill command, which may proc a new Black Arrow before they spent the old one, effectively losing an entire Black Arrow cast. You can also munch Deathblows even when you're trying to avoid kill command casts, because you might get a proc from your auto shot, which will overwrite the older Deathblow. You're at a cooldowns for roughly 2/3 of the key, so this part of the rotation is something you'll have plenty of time to perfect. One thing to note here is that every barb shot tick will reduce the cooldown of your kill command by 0.5 seconds, and it has a chance to spawn a powerful dire beast, so multi-dotting barb shot is a tangible thing to min-max. One thing you may have noticed is the lack of Bestial Wrath outside of your cooldowns. You really want to make sure your Bestial Wrath is always available to sync with your Call of the Wild window. You typically don't press Bestial Wrath between your call windows, since it may not be back up at a good time. Sometimes with a lot of haste, like in Bloodlust, you may be able to send a Bestial between 2 calls, but I typically advise new hunters to always sync them. A min-max you can do later is try to send your Bestial Wrath between your call windows if you know for certain it'll be back up for the start of your next call window. Now, let's talk about your cooldown windows. Your cooldown windows are extremely important. Look at this graph from my sim. In single target, these peaks are roughly 11 to 13 million DPS, and the troughs are around 2 million DPS. In AoE, the peaks are closer to 35 and 40 million, and the troughs are about 12 million DPS. This means that it's really important to study your cooldown windows, since they're where a majority of your damage are coming from. Since we're such a bursty spec, I would recommend using 2 on-use trinkets to further enhance your cooldowns. If you're still in the gearing process, 1 on-use trinket is totally fine until you can get 2 solid on-use trinkets. I would rank the on-use trinkets and equip trinkets as follows on my screen. And then let's talk about the cooldown rotation now. The optimal cooldown opener is always Bloodshed, Call of the Wild, and then Black Arrow, and then you enter the priority list. So in your cooldowns, your spell priority is Black Arrow, Bestial Wrath, Kill Command, Barb Shot, and then doing nothing. Call of the Wild activates a passive called Withering Fire, which gives you a death blow every 4 seconds over the 20-second duration of Call of the Wild, for a total of 6 guaranteed Black Arrows. You can visualize the Call of the Wild window as a timeline, with these 6 guaranteed procs at the 0, 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20 second points. You want to always have an open global for these guaranteed procs so that you can spend them instantly and not munch them. Let's assume your global is 1.15 seconds, and let's analyze the smallest section of the call window, the 0 to 4 second mark. With 0 seconds being the Call of the Wild global, you always get Deathblow. This means you're casting a Black Arrow as the next global at 1.15 seconds. So now we're at 2.3 seconds. So we're either casting Black Arrow or Bestial Wrath here, depending on if we got a proc. That puts us at 3.45 seconds. We know we got a proc at 4 seconds, and there's this rule that we have to follow to have an open global at 4 seconds. So we can't spend the global at 3.45, or that would push us to 4.6, which means we're leaving ourselves open to error. Because let's say, for example, a kill command that we hit at 3.45 gives us a death blow, or an auto shot between 3.45 and 4.6 gives us a death blow. Then we would effectively be munching the 4-second death blow. So we wait. and we do nothing at 345, spamming the black arrow button until the free one at 4 seconds. We spam black arrow because let's say an auto shot procs a Deathblow at 3.6 or maybe 3.9. We want to be able to react to that so that the 4.0 Deathblow still isn't munched and we get another black arrow cast. Then the cadence kind of repeats itself in the 4 to 8 second block of the cooldown timeline. So we have black arrow 4, kill command at 5:15, black arrow at 6:30, wait at 7:45 for the 8 black arrow. And then we send that one and then you repeat it into the next one. Just for another visual, this is a graph showing how many seconds of globals are spent on each ability. You can see here that a robot executing your rotation perfectly is waiting about 17.7 seconds over this 5-minute sim. Now let's talk about optimal stats. I recommend hovering near 30% haste, and then having an even amount of crit inverse, and then having as little mastery as possible. The reason I recommend these stats is a little complicated, but let's go back to the call window to try to better understand the reasoning behind it. There's a formula for your global, which is your haste percent is equal to 1.5 over t minus 1 times 100, and t is your target global. You don't really need to know this, but it may help make more sense of this next section. Let's take a look at the 3 possible Call of the Wild haste breakpoints, while following the rule to always hold a global for the guaranteed Deathblow procs. In the 90 to 100% haste range, you can fit 4 globals in each block. In the 51 to 89% haste range, you can fit 3 globals in each block. And in the 0 to 50% haste range, you can fit 2 globals in each block. The sweet spot of being near 30% haste gives a natural global of 1.15, which means that you have plenty of time for internet latency or brain lag to still comfortably make the 2 global block. Having Lust or PI will comfortably put you into the 3 global block, with Lust and PI putting you into the 4 global block. There's no real point in stacking too much haste really, since you'd never feasibly reach the 3 global breakpoint with just gear. Not wanting to go past the first haste diminishing returns, I opt to put the rest of my stats evenly into crit verse, since they are the stats that scale with Black Arrow the best. This makes Mastery our worst stat, since the entire spec revolves around Black Arrow. These are 2 Weakauras that can help during your cooldown window to not munch the Withering Fire automatic procs. The number in the middle of both show the timer until the next Deathblow. The one on the left is the one I use, with a number above the Weakaura that shows how many globals you can fit into your current block without having to wait. The one on the right has a red border glow when you should not cast anything and instead should wait for a guaranteed Deathblow. Both are great, and I'll drop links for both in the description if you want them. Now, let's circle back to talents. Honestly, there's only 3 different builds, and it's just that there are 2 talent points left over once the core build is made, but there's 3 decent options that people tend to gravitate towards. I'll link my talent sheet in the description with all the builds. I also endorse the Icy Veins and Wowhead builds. Sims indicate that the Master Handler and Wildcall build is the worst single target but the best AoE. The Master Handler and War Orders build is the best single target but the worst AoE. And then the Wildcall and War Orders is kind of in the middle of both. I typically play Master Handler and Wildcall, but you'll see many hunters in the top 100 playing all 3 of these, and sometimes the same hunter will play these in different keys. I've tested them all, and one thing I'll mention is that the Master Handler talent puts more value into multi-dotting Barb Shot. So if you specifically don't enjoy multi-dotting, then taking the option without it might be something you might want to consider. As always, sim different talents, stats, trinkets, and whatever if you're ever curious about trying to dig deeper and try to understand things for yourself. And then lastly, for your defensives, there's a hero talent called Smokescreen, which gives you survival of the fittest every single time you hit Exhilaration. This is an extremely valuable tool and is the main reason the hunters are so tanky this season. Be sure to cycle Exhilaration with your survival of the fittest, turtle, bear, health pot, and sometimes feign death. And that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Hope you guys learned something useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and drop a comment for the algorithm. See ya!